One of the things we forget the most as Christians is the gospel. And here's what I mean by that. We forget to love sacrificially, to give graciously, and to remind ourselves that Jesus is enough. Now, how does that happen? Well, here's a few reasons why. First, we are performance-driven people. To get better grades, we perform. To make the team, we perform. To get a raise, we perform. So performance is ingrained into us, and it carries over into our relationships, and most of all, it carries into our relationship with God. Romans 3:21 through 24 says this, "But now the righteousness of God has been manifest apart from the law." Go to verse 22. It says, "For there is no distinction, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and are justified by his grace as a gift, through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus." This passage reminds us that we were saved not by performing good works, not by rule keeping, and not by following the law, but by faith in Jesus. Now, does this mean that as a Christian, we can live however the heck we want? No. Our motive to follow God's law is because we love God. Jesus gave us grace that we didn't earn. And our faith is not faith in our own abilities, but it's faith in his ability to save us. Yet it's so easy to go back to performing for him rather than having a close relationship with him. Here's the second reason. The second reason we forget the gospel is because we forget grace. As Christians, we forget that we were saved by grace, and God gave us grace so we can demonstrate grace to others. Look at Ephesians 2, verses 8 through 9. It says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not of your own doing. It is a gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast." You've been there before. Think about it when somebody has wronged you. How quickly did your mind become a courtroom? And yet Jesus already knew your sin. He knew what you would do. He knew that when he saved you, how many more wrongs you would commit throughout your life. And yet he gave you grace. And not only did he give you grace then, but he continues to give you more and more and more grace. So how much more can we demonstrate the grace of Jesus? Especially when we have this tendency to turn into Judge Judy. The third reason that we forget the gospel is because we get disconnected from other Christians. We need to gather together with other believers. In fact, the book of Hebrews talks about that in chapter 10. Verses 24 through 25 say, "And let us consider how to stir one another up to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." This passage reminds us that we need to gather together with the church. We need it like an athlete needs the weight room, like a student needs a teacher. We need each other. We need other believers. You've seen it before. Those that distance themselves from the church distance themselves from Jesus. And as a result, they replace Jesus with something else. They replace Jesus with a hobby. They replace Jesus with a job. They replace Jesus with a boyfriend or girlfriend. They're always going to replace Jesus with something else to worship. And as a result, they forget the gospel. Let me say this in closing. If we're going to be reminded of the gospel and not forget it, we need to go back to the fact that Jesus wants a relationship. He doesn't want performance. That Jesus wants us to show grace and not become Judge Judy. And that Jesus wants us to gather with the church and not replace the church with something else.